Hi and welcome to the Guildford.Games Festival interview sessions. We are Stellar Entertainment, joined by Chris and Darren. Hi guys.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. Do you want to just give me a little bit of background on what you've done, where you've been, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I can start. I'm Darren Potter. I'm the Dev Director here at Stellar. I have been in the industry for a fair while. I started with EA back in 94, 95 in the QA department and just worked my way through the business, working on lots of different titles, sports titles, racing titles, open world action games for lots of different publishers. It's been a fantastic time. Yes.
I like it.
Yes.
And Chris?
So I'm Chris Roberts. I'm the creative director at Stellar. I've been in the industry, I don't know, a long time. Dinosaurs were around probably 20 years or so. And I started off making helicopter flight simulators, and then I started crashing cars, making Burnout. I've kind of been doing a lot of that ever since. Little, side trips into Harry Potter land and things like that. And then I joined Paul at Stellar about 5 years ago, and it's the most fun I've had in games, which is great.
Oh, that's quite the accolade.
I'd echo that.
Yeah, it's really cool.
You better, now that you've not said anything.
You're
You're going to have to.
Yeah.
We wanted to, what's happened here is that I've been given a little bit of free rein with the Guildford Games Festival interviews. And I wanted to talk about tried and tested game dev methods, or those that fail, tried and failed. It may be an interesting conversation. I'm not sure the directions we're going to end up taking this, but let's go with all of your fantastic experience in creating video games and video games that have been hugely successful and loved by gamers throughout the world. Do you think, or do you have, I should say, a solid, this is how I'm going to start making a game? Is there anything that you do that kind of helps that process from the get-go?
Speak to the creative one.
So
the get-go is interesting. So I don't think there's one set formula that works for everyone. And I think sometimes you change the way you work depending on the team that you're with, but also maybe on the game that you're working on as well. So if it's a new IP, we may approach that slightly differently to something which is a sequel or a remaster or a remake. But a lot of it generally starts with very creative people like Chris, who basically sit down in a room and throw things at a piece of paper.
Plot it all out.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the best ways to start a game, and I've learnt this as time has gone on, is you don't want to start feeling like you're already late. So putting pressure on the creative process is hard. You want to time box it. You want to say, oh, you haven't got an infinite amount of time, but feeling like, oh God, it's like I've recently started, this is a weird digression, but I've recently started coaching kids football. It's one of the things I've done in lockdown, and I caught myself shouting, calm down, at 11-year-olds, which makes no sense, right? So come up with good ideas doesn't really work. So
faster.
Yeah,
exactly.
faster.
Yeah.
And so it's coming up with a way to get a small team. I think start with a small group, not a big group, because if you've got if you're feeling the weight of a whole team waiting for you to sort of come up with the goods, or you're trying to get everybody to contribute simultaneously to one thing, that gets really messy and hard. So we're working on a new game right now, and we're keeping it small. So start small but communicate large. Yeah. So make sure everybody knows what's going on. So, and then you can draw input and ideas, because there's no monopoly on good ideas at all. That's not the case. We're not trying to be squirrels with our nuts by being small. But I think start small, get out of work a little bit. So especially when you're coming up with an idea. So one of the things that the designers here are going to deal with is me taking them to the V&A, and we'll spend the day at the V&A and just think about the game by not thinking about the game, and see what comes from that, and then that starts just building something that still works but has changed over time, and how you do it is the game on the wall. So kind of everybody does it. I think we've moved beyond Post-it notes. There's more tools that we can do for that now, and also because we're working remotely, that kind of doesn't work. So we've been using different tools for that, and so but the game on the wall is a way of looking at something that doesn't yet exist and seeing, well, what are all the bits that make up? Does this look like a bag of bits? Does this look like something interesting? Can we see where all the bits connect? Can you see where all the work is going to flow out of those?
Yeah, almost the key points, the key beats,
Yeah,
almost, right?
exactly.
And then
Yeah.
you can
Yeah.
start to define what they're going to be and the in-between.
Exactly, and games are non-linear largely as well,
absolutely.
so it's not like a movie. It's not got like a beginning, a middle, and end, unless you're making a narrative game. But even then, you have the
And
mechanics.
not just game. I guess game development is not linear. You
No.
know,
No,
working
it's
out how to
not.
get your end product in the first place.
I mean, the other great thing with a game on the wall is the big thing that always comes up whenever we've been making games is always about alignment. You know, aligning around a central idea is it sounds really easy. Oh, we're going to do this, but actually, the number of times I've worked with teams where people don't necessarily think the same thing, even though they've had the same information via mail or some other way, is really, it's incredible. It happens so often. So alignment and communication they're always the fundamentals, along with a great idea. But making sure that everyone's pulling in the same direction is incredibly important. And the game on the wall is a really, really good example of something that we've always done. It's something that's consistent. I mean, looking around the studio, you'll see stuff on the walls here already. It's important to make sure that we're all pulling in the same direction. So that's been good.
I think you're right, and it also helps you to sort of corral the cats.
Yeah, I was
slightly.
going to mention.
And you know, that's you know, you need that.
Yeah, I think the difficulty is from the creative point of view. It's like you just want no pressure. You want to find that
The
diamond.
freedom,
You need the time
yeah.
to mine for that diamond, and those ideas aren't easy to come by. Sometimes they'll come, but sometimes you have to really dig deep. And as a dev director, my view is, well, but we need to do something. We need some form of framework, but we can make frameworks. I mean, Chris and I have worked together for probably 12, 15 years, I think. But there are ways that we can do that by just saying, okay, well, are there big monthly goals that we want to hit? Can we break something down that's at an epic level, not at a detail level, just to say, well, it would be really nice if we'd have some thought in this area, so that then maybe the month later we can start digging those into more, and we just start, you know, mining down until we get to that.
Breaking it down.
It's really difficult, though, being creative, and then the point is that there should be some form of friction between creativity and development direction, really.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes when you fit something in a box, Chris and I were talking about this on Monday actually, you need something surrounding you to kind of almost give us some new ideas or some different directions. Or, well, Chris, you haven't got the moon on a stick, so what can you do? And that does breed good ideas.
Yeah, I've learned to love constraints. Yeah, as in you know, the edges. Like push it to the edge, but you know there's an edge there, and you're trying to fit to something, or there's a date, or you're trying to deliver it. Because the other thing is when you start delivering things, you start seeing progress rather than sort of drowning in stuff.
And I suppose with other creative mediums, there doesn't necessarily have to be a ceiling for them. You know, music, you could go out and, you know, talk about throat music earlier. You can add as much throat singing to your album as you wanted. You just have to go and be able to find it. But with
as many
video
theremin
games,
solos as you
all
want.
of that. Bill Bailey's so into that stuff. And it's a slightly different thing with games, I suppose, where we're having to rein it in to a certain extent in order to stay within the parameters that
I think
it can fit in.
The reality is there's always going to be we don't have an infinite amount of money, and we don't have an infinite amount of time. So we're all and you would never release anything if you were given that much leeway. I mean,
absolutely.
It would you would just be forever in perpetual development hell, in my opinion. So
waiting for the super console that can
deliver
your vision.
Do it all, and you're going to put every idea you've ever had into that video game, and the particles are going to be insane.
It'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly. I can understand, and I suppose there's that element of from working in studios and knowing when something new is happening. The project's come to an end, okay, they're starting to prototype for the next thing, and knowing that there's a room somewhere and it's a small team and they're working on it, but we don't know anything about it yet.
Yep.
That moment that the game on the wall stuff starts happening, for the rest of the team is just the most wonderful thing, you know, to get an idea of what's happening.
I love concept art, you know. I love like seeing like what's in our heads, and it's starting to sort of take some shape, and somebody's taking an idea and running with it, and you know, I love that, and that's something that people can rally around. Like it's like, oh, okay, it's going to look like this then, cool, all right then, that's great. So sooner we can get that, the better. You know, and that's the same in like a movie. you know, and or a TV show, you kind of start to see it in 2D before you can see it in 3D.
Yeah. It's an interesting challenge because what you don't want is to create almost a sub-team that everyone else is looking through the glass and not feeling like they can be involved.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I think that's always, I mean, right now we have a project which has been going for about a year, and we're also starting something new. And eventually everyone will work on everything. Right? We're that size where it's good that we can be involved in everything. But you don't want to alienate the people thinking, well, all the good work's going to be done by the time I get here. It's basically finding a way that we can bring those people along the ride and feel like they have a voice. And at Stella, we're very open to everyone being in everything if they want to. You know, we have an open meeting policy whereby you can attend any meeting you want to, really.
That's really cool.
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah, so people can feel involved and part of it, even though they may be working on something slightly different.
And I suppose, kind of going back to what I was talking about with Paul earlier, that diversity of story, diversity of experience is so important to the whole process.
Yeah.
You know, not just we're making a game, we're trying to work out what this game is, and at that point it needs to be involved. You know, the whole team kind of
It's like no monopoly on good ideas. Like just take it from as many sources as you can, and then like my job, and a lot of it is almost like an editor, is putting it together into the whole.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's a fun bit. I like that. You know, I actually find the start the most stressful bit. Like once it's actually taken shape and you can see it, and you start to move it forward, then I start to feel comfortable. I like to feel uncomfortable and sort of slightly stressed about the beginning, because then I know that we're pushing
in the right place. Yeah, and it's almost a sharing of responsibility. Once you get the formed ideas, and you can start to hand it over to the rest of the team.
Exactly.
So okay, this is now happening.
There you go.
Precisely. Well, speaking about that part of the process, from your respective positions within the company, which do you feel is the trickiest part of the game development cycle to kind of integrate department, I suppose would be a better way to put it. So you can say community managers if you want. I won't be offended. We can do it that way.
I don't know if there's anyone that I can think of that I could call out, really.
I could.
Go on, do it. No one is.
That's the rest of the interview.
So
I'm not being creative. It's like it's just easy for me. Everyone just fits in a slot.
They just do
it's
it.
not a problem.
I think there's two areas that are really hard to integrate, and it's through no fault of their own and through no fault of the process, and it's almost like how they work. Is if you imagine this office, right? It's a load of people working with headphones on or looking at monitors, so you can see stuff. You can see it. That's great. But invariably you don't hear it. So audio, I think
that's a good point,
is really hard because just by necessity they tend to be segregated because they need to be in a soundproof room, and it's not because they don't work and play well with others. It's not like a padded cell or anything. That they have to be there because they need to crank it up.
They want it that way.
They want to be able to crank it right up and hear it, and they I'm sure they would like to be more integrated, but that is a physical reality that can't happen. So it's really, really easy to forget about the audio. And, it's a cliche, but it's true. It's half the picture, right? Yeah. So if you don't get that right, then the game can be annoying, can have the tone can go out the window. All those things can happen. So for me, super important, but also super hard. And it's also, especially from a small dev point of view, you're less likely to have like a big audio department. So you might bring it in too late into the process, or too early, and you're not quite ready.
And the balance of audio itself, dealing with markers and what the player's going to hear or feel as as you're going through a certain point is not going to happen until everything else is real.
Yeah, that's the biggest issue, I think, from the experience of working with people in the audio departments, is they're generally at the end of the line. Things tend to be slightly more formed by the time they get it than other areas, and it's always, and then at that point historically, when you're looking at the time cost quality thing, it's like, well, we need to get this out, we need to do something. It always feels like it's the audio design that gets the squeeze. And actually what we're trying to do now is make sure that we are thinking of those things earlier. We are including them earlier and making sure that doesn't happen, because, as you say, it's half the screen. Right?
It is, yeah.
It could pull you right out of the experience if it's not, unnoticeable.
Yeah. There's some great games that I've played recently that are hidden behind that that the audio implementation is perhaps, or the choices that have been made, cause you to bounce off slightly, and if you persevere, it's great. And then there are some other games that maybe are slightly weaker from a gameplay point of view, but the audio design is amazing, and so that carries you through. So, they can help a lot, and they're super important. So, and also, in pre-pro and concept discovery, we're at the start of a game, we do a lot of ripomatics, visual ripomatics of stuff, and we're doing concept art and drawings and stuff. So why not do audio ripomatics? Like, what's that going to be like? So that's something that we need to get better at.
Yeah.
So
and we're lucky, actually. We have worked with some industry leading, I think, audio people in our time, and we have been kind of taught in the right way. I'd like to think. I think
we behave.
Yeah, we behave. Yeah, they're all quite happy to shout at us when we're not doing things the right way. So I think that's a good thing.
As long as, it's good that they feel they can. That's the way to look at that. It's a great relationship.
Yeah, they turn up their attenuation and then they're much louder.
So talking about the less creative roles, talking about production and dev management kind of roles, it's often a space that, a role, a department that doesn't get the respect and the kind of accolades, frankly, because without someone looking after the game, it's not going to happen.
Right. Well, I don't know. I think
so.
I think the function really is, in my opinion, the dev management, the production side is there to pull everyone together, to solve the issues, to think about things that may get missed, to pick up things that other people shouldn't be doing. And I think realistically, the great producers and dev managers are those ones that are basically so attuned with their teams, they know what's happening immediately. They know everyone, they can get on with everyone, they can see a problem before it happens and basically start putting those things in process. I think the idea of, we're very collaborative, we're very lucky in it, and basically I think something that has changed over the years is I think people are much more development savvy or project roadmap savvy than we were maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago. So I think everyone coming in now, especially the grads that we see, they already have done something along the lines of, well, yes, we've had to make our own project.
It's become a serious business, hasn't it?
And I think that's it. It's very much that. So
less freeform.
So for me, I think the days of the producer standing at the front and being the figurehead, I was never happy with that. It was never a role that I enjoyed doing personally. I loved representing the team, but it was never about me. It was, that's not where I would always want to be as a producer. For me, it's making sure that everyone can shine and that everyone gets their glory.
The best producers I've ever worked with have been cheerleaders, problem solvers, and ultimately messengers, people that will be running to another department before I've even realised that there's a problem that I need them for, and looking into that. And that foresight does tend to come from being a very small, integrated, close team, even if it's just within the kind of production team that you're working in, and I think, you're right, a producer should stand alongside.
It's not, I think this is why I love being at Stella so much is, we're a growing studio, we're still relatively small in number, and everyone knows everything. Everyone knows everyone, should I say. And everything. And everything. Well, we do know everything. But basically it's not, I've worked in, 200-person teams making games, and I never really gelled that much with that scale. They're great games and I love working on them to a certain extent, but it's not the same as building a team, working with people day in, day out on a small thing that you can craft together and feel that sense of ownership for everything.
And understand the reasoning for, why that decision was made, or what it means to have that element of the story or anything.
Exactly that. I think also the smaller teams, and this is, Chris will nod, I know he'll nod on this because I know him well enough, that the thing that sometimes you find with bigger teams is you get siloing effects where people will sit down and say, well, I did my bit.
I did not.
Yes. I did my bit, or, well, my bit's done for the milestone. It's like, well, no, because we're not delivering just your bit at the end of the day. We need to, everything needs to be together.
It's I think
that's the biggest curse. I think that's the biggest curse of games. My bit's all right. Well, we're not just shipping your bit.
No.
Yeah, 100%. We've got to click it to all these other bits, and that takes some hard work.
So for me, there is a huge skill in making these massive games across multiple studios, across multiple time zones. And the people who can do that are amazing in my eyes, because that's not a skill that I have or I really want to go down. I wouldn't say it's boutique because that's a bit bougie and rubbish to say,
that.
but I quite like
artisan.
I quite like the older school, slightly more indie setup.
Yeah.
I like that vibe. I just like working with people, and I think that's what the best games I've made is we've all had fun. We've all played the game, which is incredible how many teams don't play the games that they make. And you can basically all sit around a screen and enjoy the game you're making while you're making it. I think that's always the best way.
Absolutely, yeah.
For me, the dev manager and the producer, I like the analogy I like to use from the best ones, and Potts is the best, helicopter pilot. Because the team, and that's why my bit all right happens, and you also get lost. Like you're in the reeds, or you get obsessed with something, and but the dev manager and the producer is like looking at the whole, and especially with the smaller team, when you've got to roll your sleeves up and get involved, and that can be addictive. It can be problematic. You can get stuck. You can take your eye off this bit because you're overly concentrating on that bit. And what the great dev managers and the great producers do, they look at that and go, they're steering it. This is the product. This is what we're making. Yeah. This is the experience that we're trying to get to. This is the goal. And it's so easy to forget that, because you can think about micro goals or what's happening next week, or what am I doing today?
Yeah. Exactly. And especially in those bigger teams when there's 200 of you and you're in lockdown and you're all at home and whatever else is going, it must be so easy to just focus on the thing in front of you. Yeah. So if you were a small indie team who maybe didn't have dev manager, producer, are there any methods that you guys would recommend for keeping them on track without that role?
So we're pretty agile in the way we work. So waterfall was something everyone used back in the day, and it's. I was
going to ask about Post-it notes, but I don't know if I'm going to go into it.
I love Post-it notes. I've got some somewhere. But being virtual, so we tend to use we use virtual Post-it notes now, and essentially they're fantastic things. But the thing that we do use every day, and every successful team I've ever worked with we've always done morning stand-ups. We've always talked about what we did yesterday, what we're doing today, am I blocked on anything, and just that 15 minutes in the morning where everyone can get together and say, well, I'm doing this, or I was doing this yesterday, but I'm a bit blocked. That's stopped so many problems from happening just because everyone's there. The feature teams are there, or the entire team is there. And that's something that you don't need a dev manager for that. You just need the team to want to get together and talk. Yeah.
It's a positive habit.
Yeah.
You build that positive habit. You meet like for a time boxed amount of time, so you're not rambling. You're talking about specific things. You're delivering that information. Everybody knows. And then you've recently introduced the whole Scrum of Scrums thing.
Yeah.
So that's like a little meeting with just like one person plucked from the other
each kind of aspects of the game.
And they've made notes. So it's different people making notes. So everybody's kind of listening and aligned. So I think that works really well.
Yeah. It must also be quite good for getting a gauge of for those teams that may well still be remote, getting an idea of how someone's feeling about the bit that they're dealing with right now.
Yeah, like Post-it notes, they're addictive and you can overuse them, and they also are difficult to maintain. So we've been using this thing called Miro, which is like a shared workspace, which essentially is virtual Post-it notes, but you can link it together and you can put links to it, and it's great, right? So you can zoom out and look at it from like space. It's massive. Like you can create like a huge thing. So the average Miro board, if you're actually using Post-it notes, would be the same size as the floor of this room.
Whoa.
So you put them all in and they're connected, and that's great, right? But if everybody on the team is using their own Miro boards and you're trying to connect that and figure out what's up to date and what's not, it's exactly the same as Post-it notes. But we're working remote, so it's a great place to meet and have one source of truth. So it's actually tailoring that and going, no, not everybody have one. Just let's just have one big one that we all work in, and we're aware of that space. So it's using it. It's a very powerful tool, but it can also ride roughshod over organisations.
Well, it's one of those, you keep feeding it, you keep feeding it because you think, you're being really diligent.
It always needs an editor, and that doesn't need to be one person all the time. You can, I think it needs to be up to date. I think that's the whole thing with documentation. Always, right? If it always bloats, it's always got redundant information in it. And unless someone is on top of that, whether that's a producer or a team lead or whichever area, you're going to fail, basically, because no one will know what the source of truth is.
Yeah.
We have a really cool game on the wall for our game, like a virtual one, which is just all links. So it's like they're Post-it notes, but they're all links, and they're all kept up to date underneath.
Oh, that's
So
right.
rather than you having to go to like Confluence and look at a contents page and look around it, you look at the game on the wall. So the first thing you look at is the whole game, and then you go, what bit am I looking at? This bit. Okay, then you click on it and it takes you to that bit. And yeah, I'm sure everybody's doing that. It seems like a pretty sensible thing. And Malka, one of our designers, he came up with that idea, and I thought, yeah, that's great. We'll use that.
Yeah.
So, and it's proving useful. It's like a one-stop shop, which is what we need.
Having a list of stuff that you want to do is incredibly powerful.
I love lists, man.
Blessed are list
Really
makers.
I can't tell you how much I love a
My
list.
lists have lists
It makes
on
my
it.
life very happy and to have a list of things to do. So you don't need to use Jira for that. You don't need to use anything. You could write it down. As long as everyone has access to it, you can use Google Sheets, you can use whatever you want. But essentially, just having a way to break down work enough that people know what they're doing without stifling to that, well, today I'm going to be doing exactly this. Because I think there's a really good learning. It's like the perennial issue is always, how long is it going to take to do this? I have no idea. I haven't done it.
Yeah.
So when I ask an engineer how long it's going to take to do something, I don't know. Can I investigate it first? Yeah, okay. Can you spend a day on it and then we'll come back? So there's always a way of exploding something out, so that you start with a big thing. Let's do the investigation first, and then I'll have a better idea. So I think the idea of Agile fits so much better, and small teams can do this without needing any software at all. It's more a case of saying, well, okay, well, what are the big things we want to achieve this month? Okay, well, let's take one of those and break it down a little bit on a piece of paper, and we can go from there.
Yeah. There are a few, I suppose, sayings that you hear when you're working in game dev: fail quickly, fail often. You know, keeping it simple. In this instance, even when you're a team that's not the huge sizes that we've been discussing, who's deciding what's simple? How do you keep it simple when there's more than one person involved in that situation? What even is simple?
Well, one of the things that I try to do with the design anyway is you can write a design document, right, and it can get massive, right, and maybe massive is useful, but really if you're writing something massive without wondering what it's for and who's it for, then that's a problem. So what we try to do, and I've learnt this from working at other places as well, this is gathered knowledge, is initially like, why is this feature cool? Why? Like, tell me, write succinctly why this feature is cool. How does it make me feel? And what are the rules that you need to apply to this feature to make it good? Get those things done first. That's the simple thing, and then you can go into as much detail as you want, but till you can actually solve those things, then it's not ready to go. It's not even ready to talk about. And then fail fast.
Yeah.
And you know, we are living in a great world of technology now that you can do that. So you can use something like Unreal or Unity to get something up and running and play it and go, is this rubbish? Yeah, it is actually.
Yeah.
This idea sounded really good, and now we're trying it, and it's rubbish.
Yeah.
And do that as early as you can, because you know we've had some stupid ideas and that have turned out great, and things that seem quite sensible that are just crap.
Yeah, you've got to drop them and move on as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and you can't be too
on to the
precious.
next thing. Yeah, absolutely.
I think working software is always the best way to demonstrate stuff. It's something Paul 100% would agree with this. It's essentially, can I play it? Can I do something with it? Can I see
let me
it?
feel it ultimately.
Because
yeah.
I mean, Chris and the design guys write amazing documentation, but the way I read that is that's my subjective opinion on that. Whereas if we sit down and play a game together, we pretty much know whether something's right or not. You can feel it, and that's just a universal truth. When something's right, you know it's right in video games.
Get it into the hand as soon as you possibly can, and it's also similar to audio. Actually, another thing that gets forgotten quite quickly when you're making games is game cameras, because that's how the player sees the world. So you get that nailed early, so you're giving the player's view of what could be potentially crude, but make that sophisticated as you can, as early as you can, because then you get a bit more of a feel for it. So that will help.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Prototyping is so important, and it is, you know, again, aside from the time that the door opens and you realise that you've got a new project, it's that moment of real excitement, like, oh gosh, it's real. Okay, this is what we're doing. This is where we're going.
And also, it's about not expecting every prototype to make it.
Yeah,
we don't have that expectation that's what someone's working on is going to be make it into the game. We don't know until you play it.
No, the experience that you get from it is permanent, because that has the learning stays.
Yeah.
But what you do is temporary. So it could be throwaway, it could be basic, but the stuff that you get from it is priceless.
So, with your extensive careers, having
Which
been
means
around
we're
for
old.
such
Yeah,
a long
that's correct.
time,
Nice way of putting that.
There you go. I'm here for you guys.
That's
I'm here
great,
for you.
thanks.
Experience.
Supporting.
Veterans.
Were there any methods that you used as fledgling developers that you're still using today? And I know we've covered a few bits and pieces, so you don't have to go into loads of detail if we have.
We kind of spoke about this a bit yesterday on.
We did.
We
did prep.
Yeah, we did a little bit
Okay,
of prep.
that's good.
That was it was down to me, to be honest.
Yeah,
too.
well, so it's never going to be down
It's
to
not
me.
going to be the creator.
So I think things that we used to do, I think things like stand-ups, I mean, we didn't know there were morning stand-ups at the time, but we've always done morning get-togethers and find out what the team are doing. We've talked about alignment. I think making sure from the way I've always worked is I've always wanted to make sure people. I'm an oversharer anyway, right? So essentially, I think that everyone should be like in the team because it's good to know what everyone's doing. So I think that's pretty consistent. I think game on wall actually is something we've pretty much always done in some way, shape, or form, and I can't see any other way of doing that. Being able to coalesce around a single place is, as Chris said, it's really important.
Show and tell.
Yeah.
It is, it worked at school, and try and make it fun is the other thing.
Even better if there's beers.
I mean,
Yes,
it's also like,
at school.
well, you want someone to be enthusiastic about showing you something cool.
Good. Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
look at this, I did this.
Yeah.
Whereas I've been in situations where that's been actually a moment of fear and anxiety. So actually making that not about that would be great. It's more like, this is a fun thing.
Celebration of it.
Show me your good stuff, and this that's great. And then there's a weird one that sort of hung around, and I see it whenever I go and work with other people, and it has different names. But we did this thing called the $100 test.
Yeah.
Where,
I don't know this.
So you've got a bunch of features that are important to your game. You've got $100 to spend on them, and then you can.
Where does it go? Right.
Where does it go?
Yeah.
And then you can like kind of see if somebody's completely indecisive and they just put $5 on everything, and it's just like, well, you don't know then, and then. Or you can see which ones people find the most important, and you do it separately. You don't do it like everybody does it. And then that's another way, like as Potts alluded to, is like alignment. Like you can get that together, and then just getting a word cloud together, like it's mind mapping. I mean, back in the day, is coming up with a load of verbs and descriptive words, adjectives about what you're doing, and seeing which ones show up the most. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I think the other thing that we've always done is we've always tried to understand what we're making, who we're making it for. So I think that's always been important. I think we can all make games for ourselves, but it would sell to one person, right? So I think we've always tried to understand who our market is and who we're trying to make games for. And that's really important.
Yeah.
Yeah, that translates into play the competition.
Yeah.
Or play the influences, or be aware of the market, and don't be an isolationist. Don't just ignore what's going on. Look for trends. If you've got a great publishing partner, they have a lot of power. They can help you with that. Yeah. And so we didn't really know back in the day that we were being somewhat data driven, like trying to look at stuff like that. And whereas now you can be super data driven, and it can completely steamroller all creativity. So it's about finding that balance.
Yeah, the balance of the whole thing, which again is where you come into a certain extent.
No, it is. I mean, it was funny. I was thinking about Edge magazine a while ago, and thinking back in the day. I mean, I don't know how many years ago, a long time ago. That was almost like a Bible for us, and maybe it is still for someone. All those kind of publications are, but it was a big deal to know what everyone else was doing because we didn't have so much reach with the internet. Really.
It was a different world.
It was it was. So I think having that hasn't changed. Wanting to know about other games. I mean, we all play games. That's really important.
That's why we're here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think they're the things that still motivate and lead to change and do all those important things that we want to make things that are fun. And if people aren't having fun, then something's wrong basically. But knowing your competition, knowing what other trends are around is important. That will always be the same. I think
that's super important, and actually quite neatly leads us into something that I wanted to ask you guys, which was Twitch streaming. Talking about how the world's changed as far as the internet. Twitch is only something that we've had for 5 years or something ridiculous. How have you seen it change how we develop video games. You know, I've been in a lot of studios and seen, you know, launch day comes and the whole studio is gathered around a TV watching every single stream until 5 a.m. You should speak to Gary Carr. 5 a.m, he will stay up watching streams of 2 Point if they've launched something. And they're almost taking that real-time feedback and going straight back to the game engine and sorting out whatever needs doing. So how have you seen it kind of change the development?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. So I'm super addicted right now to GTA RP on Twitch. It's literally, if I'm not playing games, I'm probably watching something or playing a game with my daughter. But so I think it's super powerful. I think it's a really good way of actually of polling people for information. So before, you know, we would, and again, something very important is we want people to play the games early. So we'll we'll game test a lot. But having access to that number of people that quickly, as soon as you launch, it's a really amazing tool that we just never had before. It wasn't. So what we find now is obviously games are much more like live services. You know, there's much more opportunity to be able to patch stuff. Back in the day, if we were working on cartridge, forget it. You know, it was one and done basically. So I think having that power now to look at how people are perceiving what you're playing, and taking information from that and understanding more, and maybe, you know, is there a patch that we can do, or is there something? Having that rapid access is really, really important.
And a similar kind of thing with face-to-face stand-ups, even in lockdown. You know, you're actually hearing and gauging the emotion of an individual rather than reading a review and thinking, are they annoyed? I'm not sure. Maybe they didn't like that, and I'm reading this with my, you know, kind of spin on it, or what I'm worried about.
It's really interesting. I still think of it. I think I've heard musicians say this a lot, that they write music that they think means one thing, but to their audience it could mean something completely different, and they don't mind. And I kind of see that a bit when we make games now. I'm thinking, well, they shouldn't have been doing that when they were playing it, but actually it just leads to some if it leads to something else. I mean, we look at glitches sometime and we're like, oh my god, I can't believe that ever got out. But actually, sometimes those glitches are the fun things that they make it.
Yeah.
So
really
if people find it, then they get entertained by it. I have a real, I guess, love-hate relationship with it, in that I think it's incredibly powerful and super interesting when it's honest, and I think the problem is that can change. And it depends what you're looking at.
So from the sponsor stream type
well,
of thing?
The authenticity. I mean, honestly, we'll hear groans from throughout Guildford because I say authenticity so often in my working day, but it's so important. You can tell when someone doesn't really care. Yeah. And they're just there because they've been asked to.
I think passion is great, and honest passion is even better. But for me, it's kind of, there's a combination of, you want to know what people think, but you also want people to look at what you thought first, and if it becomes you chasing the tail, like you're after it, it's like I said before, it can become too data driven, you're trying to homogenize it based on reaction or data, and then you lose the creative vision. It's coming from me because I kind of think that I might have the best idea, but I might be wrong, right? And I'm perfectly willing to allow that, but we want to have the risk. We want to have the risk. You don't want to de-risk it entirely, because you might not get anything new. There was a really good story about movie studios thinking, when they got focus testing and stuff, that they could focus test the perfect movie, create something that would be really good. And it was, I can't remember the name of the movie that they made, but it was awful, and it bombed really hard. So it's finding that balance. Like I love the fact that, you know, my son is way more informed about video games, and he'll come and tell me about stuff that he's excited about and he's interested. And some of the streamers he follows are just great. I'll watch them, and they're just great, and they're super enthusiastic. And it's like I said before, they're the least jaded people in the room. And that's what you want. That's
absolutely.
What you want. And if I'm looking at somebody then it's great. Because if they disagree with something that I've done, then that's fine. You know, that's great.
As long as it's real. So
it has to be real, and it has to be, you know, authentic. Yeah.
100%. Okay, we'll go to a final question. Which support tools or roles would you be 100% lost without? And are there any that you wish you could invent? You know, like magic. Yeah. That could be useful, right?
There's some that are red flags.
Okay,
right?
let's go with those.
So there's something I really
really enjoyed having Chris here. He's bringing the other side of it. It's cool.
There's some of the red flags, right? If you're working on a game and maybe you're finaling, and then there's a service to do your laundry or maybe get your hair cut at work, maybe that's wrong. Maybe that's a red flag. But then a service for somebody to sort of help, with your organisation, like trying to, like, say, the dailies, like set those up, have those calendars, run Jira, push things into the teams, things like that. We had like bits of it when we first started, but now there are proper programs. I mean, we're using a program right now called ShotGrid, which is great for the artists because they can, especially because we're working remotely, everybody can look at the art. Because one of the things that we really struggled with at the start of lockdown was playing the game together. Like if you're doing a build review and you're trying to stream the game on Zoom back in lockdown 1,
the old days,
you're looking at about 7 frames a second and you're like, well, I think this is playing all right, I don't know. It looked
all right for those 2.5 seconds that it was running.
So one of the things that we have now is good internet connection. So I have what's great for me that is a support system is I can have my big expensive PC at work, I have a laptop at home, and I can stream to it and use it at home. So I can be wherever I need to be, and that's just something that wouldn't have happened, I don't think, without this whole situation. So being able to keep promises, be around, and be flexible, that has been the ultimate support change for me, and it's been fantastic. But saying that, the other thing that we couldn't have done without, and I think you'd agree, is Slack. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Slack, Discord, those spaces where you're not just, like Paul was saying, it's not just, we're here to talk about work. Okay, guys, what are you working on today? It's not just stand-ups. It's, there's a film channel. There's a game channel.
We
have an out-of-context channel, which is a constant source of entertainment.
And you need it. You need that break from everything.
And it's a release valve.
And to be fair, you can never get enough of other people's cats.
True story.
I've started. I try and level it out with some dogs every now and again. Jeez.
Well, I'm a cat person, but I do have a dog.
So no, that's true. It's interesting. Slack, and also, before, if you'd ever said to me, "Can we do a Skype?" before lockdown, I would be like, I don't want to be on a video screen. It just doesn't happen.
You roll your eyes.
Yeah.
So now, are you the one tap dancing?
Well, I have been known. Irish
dancing. Feet of flames.
So I think things like that. I mean, look at the explosion in different videos. So we use probably 4 or 5 different video streaming or video communication things. It's great in a way that now we can be much more close to our teams, and also we can be anywhere in the world, which is a massive plus for us. I mean, we've recently opened an international studio in Europe, and we would never have been able to do that without the moving forward and being able to communicate on a daily way with those people. Don't get me wrong, I love being in an office.
Yes, it does take longer, right? Getting to know people over text, video, of course.
But the ability that I can now work with an international studio and I can see them every day and call them whenever I want is incredible.
Oh yeah. I met one of our lead artists recently for the first time in 3D, and he's really tall. Like, really tall. I'm not saying he was giving short person vibes in a video call, but it was like, he was massive.
But that's it, you wouldn't think about it. You don't think, right, how tall is this individual?
Basketball tall.
Think about it.
But, really tall. I was like, well, all right. It's weird. So we're living at slightly weird times, and so we're coming up with really creative solutions to get around it, because that's how humanity works. We're good at it. And so I feel like there's a lot of positives to take from the situation, along with the negatives.
I'd agree.
Yeah, I think we're very lucky. We're working in cutting edge technology land anyway, right? That's a technical term. That's what they call the games industry outside of Guildford. So we have the ability to do that problem solving and think about, okay, what would be a good way to involve the team that your average big business might not use. Absolutely.
I have slightly lamented the death of the quiz.
I was getting into them by the time they stopped.
We did Friday quizzes.
We had Friday quizzes for ages.
Yeah. We haven't done one for a while.
We haven't done one for a while.
You know, the problem I had with quizzes, I think some people on my quizzes might have been cheating.
Well,
they definitely were. But definitely. 100%. But it's kind of the act of doing it was kind of cool.
The act of pretending that you had it was brilliant.
Yeah.
Did I just incriminate myself?
One of our staff did a quiz on tanks, who's actually just sat.
Tanks.
He did a tank quiz, which was amazing.
Well, that's coming up next.
And it was fantastic.
Quiz.
Yes, I'd highly recommend it.
I'd be up for that.
And the top answer wasn't Sherman.
Oh, well, that's interesting stuff. Chaps, thank you so much for taking time out to talk to us
Okay.
about tanks and everything else that happens within video games. I really appreciate it.
The last thought was tanks.
Yeah.
It's been great, and hopefully it wasn't too boring.
Yes.
Not at all.
It was good.
Thank you.